So walk me through then, Jeff, like some of the things that Altvia does that your traditional CRM wouldn't do it, because the whole I didn't get to see a demo, but basically I think the clients that you guys have already validate, right, and speak, like they give you guys tons of validation. If you name drop some of your customers as well, please feel free to do it. And by the way, none of this is sponsored or paid. This is a podcast for founders and venture investors that are nerds in that sense with what we do. So I'm curious because I've been an Affinity customer for probably like 4.5-5 years or so. Sure. I like it. It makes my life easier. I used Relate IQ before they were acquired by Salesforce. Yeah. I think that one of the things that apparently is a big difference is that you guys have a big thing on managing the firm, and then as you start having a bunch of different vehicles, that is it's a very painful thing, and certainly a tool like Affinity can't do that. So just I'd love to learn more, like what's Altvia we're not just a CRM, and how is it that works at the tactical level, and some of the customers that, if you can name them, that have been using some of these features with actual examples. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, totally. So to start off, I'll kind of give you a sense for some of the folks that we're working with, and we're extremely proud of our clients and our partners, and in many cases, they had this sort of faith and trust in us as a very young company at the time, and we're tremendously grateful for that. But there's a bunch of folks obviously in this sort of Greensprint community, NEA, TCV, Lightspeed. There's a whole bunch of customers that I also can't, or not supposed to name. I think people think that there's sort of some secret sauce going on, and frankly there is. But Khosla, and now you put me on the spot. I'm like, oh, what are the other ones? But like, on the buyout side, there's like Little John, Wimpoint Partners, and you can always go to altvia.com and see many of these logos.
There's a buyout firm called Little John.
Yes. And they're amazing. Yeah, they are the real.
No, sorry. I know very little about that market, but I think it's what an interesting name.
Yeah, right. Like
for buyouts.
Yeah, exactly. Little John and Co. And yeah, tremendously good at what they do. And I was, same. I've gotten to know a lot of these, buyout firms now, working with them, but sort of had no idea. And we think like we'll put our client roster against any of our sort of peers, and we'll take it. So I think that like what we're doing beyond
and also. Sorry to cut you off. I wouldn't consider even Affinity a peer just because of the size of the contract, right? The tool is it's a whole nother level. That's why in the beginning of our conversation, I named you guys the Rolls Royce of venture infrastructure, and maybe they are and with them maybe we're buying a BMW Series 3, and they're working very hard to build a Ferrari. So it's different categories. Just true.
Totally. Yeah, no, and look, I've never been one, to sort of, knock competition. I respect them all. I think everybody at the end of the day actually is, a little bit different, and there's some salesmanship and all that stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, there's an important, role I think that Affinity plays, and we, in many cases compete with them. But I'll tell you, there are people that I myself have said, like, I actually think Affinity might be a better fit, to the implied point that, like, maybe they're not quite ready for sort of some of the stuff we're doing. But, I think that what, CRM's important, right? Like, we actually have a podcast episode on this, and I think it's laid out there, not by me, but by somebody else really well, which is like, categorically, all businesses, sort of, especially B2B ones, have more or less the same functions. CRM is a part of it, right? Like finance is a thing, like, ERP, HR, type stuff, payroll. And some of these things are like super important from the perspective of like, you cannot mess them up. Like you cannot like mess up your finance system, right? But it's not like a strategic weapon. And if you look across these sort of technology stacks, oftentimes CRM is sort of more of where the proprietary stuff's happening. How are your reps, reaching out and engaging, prospects and things like that. And so the CRM components for us, are pretty straightforward. We're going to handle like raising capital, the whole sort of solicitation process, if you will. Sounds like almost like a dirty word in this case. But raising a fund, deploying it, and keeping track of investment opportunities and all those things. Where we're really, really different is, I think you sort of mentioned it, Pedro. It's like this. We think about it a firm life cycle, and we think about it as like when you raise funds, it's to invest them, and then you invest them so you can report on them, and then you report on them, and also then need all of the information that was generated, all of the exhaust in terms of data that was just generated is all going to come right back to the starting point again, because now you're going to need to tell all the LPs the next time you raise capital about the thesis, how you delivered on it, what you're good at, what you're not, how the assets are performing. So a big part of my experience at Greenspring was like, this is a circular process. And, the data that is in it at any point is sort of the same data. It's just kind of cycling through, different motions in different stages. And so the way we've looked at it is like, we want to be the best at everything we can be. I was just telling, a coworker the other day, like that, I occasionally worry about like the desire to be like the absolute best. Like sometimes I'm like, I know this is like a thing a lot of people do, but maybe it's excessive for me. We want to be the absolute best. It's something we're going to do, or we're not going to do it. And so we don't really do like, don't do like HR. We don't do finance, but where we're really differentiated is we're sort of creating, and this, I think I've been laughed at before. I'll risk it again. I've almost compared it to like, we want to create the rotating sushi bar that is delivering data throughout the firm to the people that need it, And so like, there may be a need for, and there's definitely a need for accounting data to be on that, sort of conveyor belt, but we don't have to be the application that's generating it. And so a big part of what's unique about what we're doing is being able to access and put together that full picture of the data that somebody needs. So it's like, hey, well, like I'm an IR person and all I'm getting questions about, the performance. Well, traditionally a lot of firms, even still today, are like, oh, we have a team of analysts that will take 3 weeks and they can tell you anything, right? And the future we envision is like, all you need to do is reach out and take that piece of sushi off and eat it. Like, and if the next person needs it, like there'll be one right behind that. And so it's really about organizing the data so that it's free flowing and available to the people that need it, including, I guess the analogy breaks down at this point, but including to the point that you actually want to begin to enable an LP experience that involves some of that data as well. So you're not going to sort of send the whole conveyor belt to them. But if you wanted to say, hey, like, well, let's let them access their account data, or let's let them see visually in an interactive experience where the portfolio has been invested and how it's doing, then, that once you've organized your own data such that anybody can access it, it's actually pretty straightforward based on all of the information you would have in there to actually very quickly enable like your LPs in a certain fund to see a dashboard that does that. So that's a big part of sort of, how we're organizing the data that we're generating in our applications, as well as the data that we're not. And then the other thing that kind of really differentiates us is that we have, in the sort of portal kind of data room segment, we basically sort of took the approach of like, throw it all away. It's all bad. Yeah, I feel I spent years suffering and being tortured in portals as an LP. And so we built a product several years ago that we said, like, what if we just totally like actually reimagined it, and we just said like, let's just imagine what it would look like for an LP to use this application and be amazed at how easy it was and how elegant it was. And let's just bet on that will get LPs talking to GPs about it, and GPs will be like, well, I have to have this thing. And so that's a big part of kind of where we are strong is the enablement of the LP experience. And it turns out that sort of conveyor belt of data feeds that experience directly to the LPs, and big part of why they love it. So this is a little bit meandering, but yeah.
No, but I think that, oftentimes emerging managers, and I will be an emerging manager until I die. just because, so I like take the Jeff Bezos day one philosophy, but there's something to be said when, when I left one VC. At that time, I had done probably already like maybe 60 plus investments in venture between my time as an associate, all the deals that I led at the firm, plus the up rounds, and some were through what you would consider a core fund, and many of the others were through SPVs. I've done many SPVs during my venture career in all the places that I either started or worked at, and since I've left as well, I've done a few already. So it's a very helpful mechanism in many ways. And the issue, though, is managing all of it. So it was very messy. So I've used Assure. I've used AngelList. I ran SPVs on Funders Club when I was working there as a client of Cornerstone Fund Services. I've used Carta. So let's try them all. And we decided to leave Cornerstone and go to Carta because of the portal. That was the only decision. The folks at Cornerstone are great. They're awesome people, very responsive. They're great. It's just not, just not software people. They're not. It's not a tech company. It's a fund management.
Service driven. Yeah.
Service. Yeah. So the combination of both are, I think, just really important. And the complexity of having multiple vehicles during the life cycle of the firm, which then I understand why your contract size, the price for Altvia is higher, because at that point, when you have that level of complexity, you probably can afford the price as well. So that isn't even a problem.
And the pain, right? Gets more severe. Yeah. So yeah.
So. But what do you think it's next then, in terms of the because it is getting a little more competitive, and
totally.
I think that you got a bunch of the old players trying to do tech, and frankly, I just ran an SPV on Assure, and the amount of bugs I found there, I'm happy to say this on the record, they're great at service, but they're going through a very painful process of scaling right now. Yeah. They're great people, but they are in pain. And frankly, the quality of the software there, it kind of gets the job done, but it's not beautiful. So, and then you see other new players just doing that type of stuff, almost at the API level. And AngelList as well, I think, has matured tremendously. So it's interesting. I think that we're getting into a point where so much technology is finally being applied to the asset class.
Yeah, exactly.